Council, we will call the meeting to order. For the record, it is October 5th, 2021 at 4:30 p.m. We'll begin today's City Council work session with roll call attendance.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilman Borton.
Here.
Councilman Cavanagh.
Here.
Councilwoman Perot. Here. Councilman Hoagland.
Here.
Councilman Burnt.
Here.
Mayor Simison.
Here. Next item up is adoption of the agenda.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Burnt.
it is my distinct honor to be able to adopt the agenda as published.
Second the motion.
I have a motion and a second to adopt the agenda as published. Is there any discussion? If none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the agenda is adopted. Next item up is the consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Burnt.
grateful for the opportunity to make a motion to adopt the consent agenda for the mayor to sign and for the clerk to attest.
Second the motion.
I have a motion and a second to adopt the consent agenda. Is there any discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the consent agenda is adopted. There were no items moved from the consent agenda, so we'll move on to item 12, which is a proclamation for Cybersecurity Awareness Month, and we'll do that if Mr. T can join me at the podium. Council, like many things we do, we like to do the proclamations for the months for many of the activities of the various city departments and activities. And I think one that continues to grow in its importance is cybersecurity, not only for the city, but for our employees and for our residents and businesses. So with that, we're going to do a proclamation. I'll ask Director Titi to make a few comments and remarks. Whereas the city of Meridian recognizes it has a vital role in identifying, protecting its citizens from, and responding to cybersecurity threats that may have significant impact to our community. And whereas cybersecurity education and awareness is crucial for everyone, including large corporations, small businesses, financial institutions, schools, government agencies, the home user, and anyone who connects to the internet. And whereas you can protect yourself by monitoring your accounts, being conscientious of what you share online, keeping computer software up to date, creating unique passwords and changing them regularly, installing antivirus programs and firewalls, and using mobile devices safely. And whereas the Do Your Part #BeCybersmart campaign serves as the national cybersecurity public awareness campaign implemented through a coalition of working together to increase the public's understanding of cyber threats and empowering Americans to be safe and secure online. And whereas maintaining the security of cyberspace is a shared responsibility in which each of us has a critical role to play, and awareness of computer security essentials will improve the security of the city of Meridian's information, infrastructure, and economy. Therefore, I, Mayor Robert E. Simison, hereby proclaim the month of October 2021 as Cybersecurity Awareness Month. In the city of Meridian, call upon the community to join me in recognizing how serious cybersecurity is and the steps each of us can take to protect ourselves and our community. Dated this 5th day of October 2021. Dave, this is for you.
With the evolving threat landscape over the last year and the things that we've seen happen in critical infrastructure and other sectors, this is more important than ever. As Mayor Simison mentioned, this month's theme is Do Your Part, Be Cyber Smart, and the theme empowers individuals and organizations to own their role in protecting their part of cyberspace. If everyone does their part, including implementing good security practices, raising awareness, educating people, including training employees, but also educating our community, our connected world that's connected by these things we use every day, will be a safer and more resilient place for everyone. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, while you're walking up, I just quick comment to Dave. Among the many great things you do, we really appreciate the constant training that you do send out, little video clips and the tests you got to take. It's mandatory. You can't skip it. We always learn something, and we've also caught your department trying to fish us, which is great, which we probably only know because we do the training that you make us do. So
Truth.
you hear about the bad stuff, but things that get caught that don't blow up to disasters, you don't hear about. Thank you for being so vigilant and requiring that of us and all of the departments, because it has saved so much headache. It certainly would have happened if you weren't diligent on this cybersecurity. So much appreciated.
And I think Dave would say, just remember that when you see the FY23 budget requests come rolling along. Okay, with that, thank you, Dave. Appreciate it. We will move on to our department commission reports. First up is the Mayor's Youth Advisory Council update. So Dave, I'll turn this over to you and let you introduce the rest from there.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. I just wanted to take 2 seconds because Sahand Keshavaras Rabar is new to us, and I wanted to welcome him all to you and introduce him as well. He's been a great addition to the team. Proud of the team, proud of the work he's done. He jumped right in feet first, as you can see. He's here already. He's been doing a lot of volunteer work on the weekends as well. So just wanted to officially welcome him aboard and say thank you for his efforts, and I'll have him come up and take it from there. Thanks, Dave.
Mr. Mayor, council members, good afternoon. I'm delighted to be here with you today for your work session. And I want to thank you for making time for us in your agenda today. And thank you, Dave, for that wonderful introduction. As the new lead advisor for the Meridian Mayor's Youth Advisory Council, it has been my absolute pleasure and honor to get to know over the past 5 weeks some of the amazing, inspiring, and really committed high school students who are a part of this year's cohort. MIAC has already started and hit the ground running with a number of events ever since the school year has started, and they've got a number of other events that are coming up in the near future. So without further ado, I do want to turn it over to 2 of MIAC's leaders who are here today to share some information about what MIAC has been up to and what they're planning to do in the near future. So we have with us today Joseph Leckie, a senior from CUNA High School. Joseph is the MIAC Vice Chair of Government Affairs. We also have Caitlin Holdeman, a sophomore at Compass Charter High School. And Caitlin is the Vice Chair for Community Service. So I will welcome them to come up and talk to you all now.
Mayor, thanks for having us today. As San said, I'm Joseph Leckie, and I serve as the Government Affairs Vice Chair for MIAC.
Yes, and I'm Caitlin Holdeman. I'm the Community Service Vice Chair for MIAC.
And we put together a presentation with some pictures and some of the stuff that MIAC's been up to over the past couple of months. Sorry, technical difficulties. So starting with some of our regular business that we've gone to get started.
So we have held our first general council meetings of the year. We've held 2 so far. And so we've organized icebreakers to kind of break the ice and get people into the meetings and start our brainstorming. And we work to gauge interest both for government affairs and community service activities and for guest speakers. So we really want to know what the youth want. And so we can strive to get that done, guest speakers that to talk about relevant topics that they actually want to hear about.
Another big goal for MIAC recently has been recruiting new members. As you guys were aware, the COVID pandemic shut down a lot of events, and MIAC was one of those, and we lost a lot of our active members during that. So we've been trying to organize events intentionally so that we can bring in more people. We put in this +1 system at many of our events where you can just bring a friend, and hopefully the exciting event gets people to bring more people in, and if they're interested in MIAC, then we provide information and let them join from here. And so far we've held a few events that we'll get to later in the presentation.
now we have some major events that we've done so far. So we have the MAYAC Kickoff. This was held on the 30th of August at Wahoo's. So we had a icebreaker activity again, just to kind of get things rolling and getting everyone kind of like more comfortable. And so we kind of introduced MAYAC to youth and their parents that came there. And we also use this event to invite people to the next event, the Treasure Valley Youth Safety Summit. And then we finished it off with bowling because youth like bowling and having actual fun times after a lot of information is thrown at them.
Can confirm that. So one of our biggest events of the year was the Treasure Valley Youth Safety Summit, which we planned mid-September. So MAYAC, as our part, helped organize the event. We ran the check-in and answered any questions people about where we're going, how this is going to work, and then we were able to actually participate in the event ourselves. And it was really insightful. Another thing MAYAC did was we got to host, and even some of us got to moderate a panel of local law enforcement that were able to discuss some of the issues they thought were pertinent for the youth today. And that was really good. And in addition, we had some guest speakers to talk about pertinent issues to youth. The two main ones being mental health and driving. Then we, plus, in addition to the speakers, we had two main activities that were really meant to engage the youth. We had if you've seen those inebriated goggles to try and mimic what's like being drunk. We did mini golfing with those, which was surprisingly really pretty difficult. And then we did texting and driving while on the go-karts. And I know that was a lot of fun. And it was really eye-opening to see, just how distracted you can be while you're on your phone while driving.
And then one of the most recent ones that we had was the Walk to End Alzheimer's. So this is an event that they hold every year. And so I was able to reach out to the director of the walk. And so this was our first community service event of the year. And we use like Google Forms to gather information about potential MAYAC members that would be interested in the event. And then we were able to coordinate with the director of the walk and get out there on Saturday and just have a good time cheering people on and helping set up. And then most recently, yesterday, we went to the farmstead for about 3 hours. It was kind of our first attempt at team building / bonding events. So we can kind of, recruit new members and kind of just get to know general counsel, because it can be kind of hard from executive council to interact with the newer members. And so we were there from 4 to 7. And because there was no regular MAYAC meeting, it was kind of a good opportunity to still get together. And that instructor time kind of made it a little more fun for everyone.
So for our up and coming events that we have in the works, as some of you guys are aware, we're going to be doing our city council and then school board forum. That's coming up October 18th. Mag's helping to run that and get the questions together and just put it on. Then a little bit later, on the 21st, we're going to set up a booth for the trunk or treat event that Meridian puts on. I don't think we've fully decided yet, but we're thinking either a lost kid booth or a voter registration. Just giving out some information. Then we're going to help with Break Up Meridian. I think the dates have been nailed down to a few dates at the end of October, but we're going to help put that together and volunteer for it. Yeah, that's all the big events we put on so far and what we're looking to do. Let's stand for any questions.
Thank you. Council, any questions or comments?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Cavanagh.
nice to see both of you. Thanks for the update. Sounds like a lot is going on and you guys are kind of capitalizing on this new environment to recruit and grow, and I applaud you for it. Council, Joseph's a humble guy, but I just also want to let everybody know, in addition to his work on the youth council, Joseph also serves on our transportation commission and is just a great commissioner. He and I rode the bus out together when we did the ribbon cutting for these new electric buses. I just think it's great that our students are getting engaged and using public transit and learning more about our city. So appreciate the update. And then I just want to say, I was at the Alzheimer's Walk on Saturday, and we were spot on. The youth council members that were there were incredibly kind and polite and encouraging, and really made the event great. So nice work on that as well.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Burt.
Mr. Cavanagh, I think you would have been in trouble if you didn't show up to that event. One last thing, great job, guys. Honestly, we're huge supporters of MIAC, and we're so grateful that, maybe COVID isn't quite an issue as it was before, as it relates to getting together and having activities and making a difference in communities. So it's an amazing deal when kiddos get together and they brainstorm and they think of wonderful ways to impact community. And I would argue that most of the time you do it better than us. And so great work. And one last thing, we're going to be doing a rake up for Meridian as well as a council. So great minds think alike.
And Council, if I could just add on, I mean, with COVID last year, my ex struggled with ways to stay engaged and involved in the remote. And I want to applaud those that did. And then the team that really stepped in this at the end of the last year's school year and at the start of this school year to work on finding new members. MIAC's been really Renaissance heavy. It just happens we have 2 non-Renaissance members here presenting, but they've made some outreach. They showed up, the things that weren't in here, they showed up at registration this year for West Data. And we're really working and encouraging kids to get involved. And I think that was showcased in some of the people that showed up at some of the things. And now it's just finding ways to keep them engaged and involved moving forward. But I want to applaud those that are really committed to, building MIAC back into it. But we've often also said it's not about the numbers, it's about the quality and the engagement and the activities. So just, this is one of the things we want to get back to doing, was having regular interaction with council as well. So appreciate that. Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, next time on the agenda is item 14, community match agreement between the city of Meridian and JST Manufacturing. And I will turn this over to Tori.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Since I'm 6 feet away from you, I'm going to go ahead and take this off during my presentation. Before you this afternoon, we have a community match agreement for your consideration between the city, Meridian, and JST Manufacturing. This agreement is in support of JST's Idaho Tax Reimbursement Incentive Agreement. First, I'll talk a little bit about JST. They're a 40-year-old Treasure Valley manufacturer of specialty machinery in the semiconductor, optoelectronics, biomedical, food processing, and other clean industries. They first approached city staff in fall of 2019, looking to consolidate 3 different locations here in Meridian. Eventually, they decided upon a location over on Lanark, just east of Eagle. And we connected them with Idaho Commerce, letting them know that this tax reimbursement incentive agreement was available for companies in the region. It's a performance-based agreement that they have with Idaho Commerce, and they're required to create a minimum of 50 new jobs. So part of the TRI requirement that's in the state statute is for local communities to provide a community match, demonstrating the local support for this company coming to their community. So for this community match agreement is a little bit different from others that the city has done in the past. While the city does certainly value, and it's one of our priorities, to create new family wage jobs. And of course, it's nice to see new consistent property tax revenue stream come in. We do need to make a direct nexus to public purpose. And that would be an expenditure that company, or a contribution that company is making that serves the general public. In this instance, JST was required to provide an extended water line and a new fire hydrant. Those are considered contributed capital improvements that are documented by a surety agreement and a bond. And those eventually do become city assets. So those in fact really do serve the general public. And again, these are above and beyond what's required to serve their facility. JST's operations align with one of our four target industry sectors that we've identified for the city. And just as a reminder, in case you don't know, or for anybody out there, our four target industry sectors are professional services, healthcare, technology, and advanced manufacturing. And that's where JST falls into, is advanced manufacturing. They also tangentially serve the technology industry as well. So one of the requirements, as I said, is 50 new jobs, and those 50 new jobs the wages for those have to average at or above the county average wage, which at the time of JST's agreement was $50,464. That has, as of July, that's been increased to, I think, around 56,400, but their agreement was approved by the state prior to that, but just kind of an FYI going forward. But their average wage is $58,138. They'll be creating 50 new jobs, capital investment of $4.7 million. We estimate that the annual real property tax increase, and that's on the land and building, will exceed $25,000 a year. In addition to the property value, they do have their assessed personal property tax, and that's on their equipment in their facility. That exceeds $2 million. They have paid $126,000 in fees for development of the facility. Just want to also point out in your staff report, these efforts do align with the Economic Development Action Plan and also the citywide strategic plan. Specifically, our community match is proposed to be $27,000 distributed over 2 years. And that is following confirmation that they met all their performance obligations with Idaho Commerce under that master TRI agreement. And with that, I will stand for any questions.
Thank you, Tori, for that thorough explanation. Council, any questions? Okay, thank you very much. Final item on the agenda is Finance Department third-party billing process proposal action. I will turn this over to Carrie for a reminder of where we were and council discussion.
Mayor and Council, I appreciate you putting me back on the docket. Wanted to circle back around for the third-party process disband request.
Carrie, can you get just a little closer to the mic?
I didn't want to, rehash the whole entire thing. If you have any other questions, if there was things that you needed me to clarify, but we are at this point in time looking for direction on, do we proceed? Do we disband? Do you want us to go a different direction?
Council? Question, comments, discussion?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Hoagland.
Carrie, I just had a question as you go through the numbers and appreciate that the thorough document that you put together on this. And, we've been doing this process here for several years now for third-party billing and looking at a couple other communities around us, looking at their write-off percentage, 5.882 for one community, the other one is 0.4407, and which both are high, and we're in the low category. And is there going to be, are we going to be chasing credit, people who owe their bill, or will that not happen?
With the debt staying with the property, we should not see that increase, because regardless of who we're sending the bills to, regardless of what documents we're chasing, the debt in Meridian stays with the property. So the owner is ultimately liable for that debt regardless. Those other communities that you're seeing in the documents, they chase the person. So if the renter moves out and even moves out of state, once they go so far, you can't follow them. So that's where the increase in write-offs.
Okay, then Mr. Mayor, to follow up.
Councilman Hoagland.
Yeah, so since we're after the owner, the other communities don't do that. They're collecting whoever was there.
Yes, they chase the person.
They chase the person. So, okay, I just want to make sure I understood that. So, thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Borton.
Remind me, was it your department's recommendation that we get rid of it and that we grandfather the existing ones? And
We would basically get rid of it, but we would phase it out
Right.
rather than just as of Monday morning,
great.
we're no longer going
Yeah.
to deal with it. We would phase it out as renters, excuse me, move out. We would just not update them back into a renter. It would just get updated either into the owner or the property manager at that level, and that's where it would stay.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Burnt.
did you reach out to some of the larger clients, maybe some property management companies to get their feedback on this change?
Not just as a kind of call of arms type thing. We have kind of tickled a little bit.
Okay.
Of course, they don't want us to do that. It is easy to use the city of Meridian as a collection agency on their behalf rather than kind of keeping track and acting as the true property manager.
Got it.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Pro.
so just as kind of a procedural question, will the tenant or whoever's occupying the property receive copies of the bill, or are they able to look at their usage? You had mentioned last time that they can go online, I believe, and
Yep.
take a look at the information. Is that correct?
Yes, if the property owner has given them the account number and some basic information, they can go online, take a look at the usage and the bill and the billings themselves.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do we anticipate that the larger property management companies, for example, will have the ability to answer those questions for the resident? Oftentimes, the owners aren't directly involved.
And I think the reason they're not involved or they're not getting the information is because they have offset it. They're telling us to send the information somewhere else. So if the owner or the property manager is getting the information on a regular basis, then yes, we can help them understand it to where they can learn it rather than relying on us to know all the
Okay.
I'm not sure if that answered your question.
Well, I think for a while, it's not going to relieve staff time if tenants are calling in saying, I don't have a way to access my account and I can't get a hold of anybody because the property manager doesn't have authorization to give me access to the account numbers, et cetera, et cetera.
And I would agree with that. There will be a transition period.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Hoagland.
Carrie, somewhere in here, you mentioned that, there will be water turnoffs. Can you give me some update on that? How that works in terms of if the property owner does not pay the bill, if we move to this, what's our process for that tenant at the place that's going to get the water turned off?
There would be no change. We send the bills out. You get your monthly bill, your second monthly bill, a third delinquent notice. If the utility bills are still not paid, the water would get shut off. We do have situations right now where the tenant will call and say, I pay my rent. The landlord's supposed to pay my bill. Unfortunately, you need to talk to your landlord.
Follow up, Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Hoagland.
And that's my concern. If we do away with this, because it does occur now, if that increases, it just adds more of that situation where people will be calling in and whatnot. And, in those, sometimes it's unfortunate situations where it's family with small kids and different things like that. And people are in a very difficult situation, no win, because their owner is not being responsive. The property owner is not being responsive. So Is this, to follow up again, Mr. Mayor?
Councilman Hoagland?
I mean, is this a revenue situation? You know, when you talk about 1.25 FTEs, that was 79,000. Water Department has, you know, some money invested, approximately $10,000 for doing those meter reads for the last time when the bill is owed. Because, you know, one way to do that, instead of just a $20 fee for setup, we could be charging them $20 annually, which would raise 110, based on 5,500 accounts, that's $110,000, easily covering the costs of the program. If we just go to $20 every year, there's an annual fee.
Yeah, it was not, the proposal was not brought forward to resolve revenue issues or anything like that. It literally was brought to the table based on results of our innovation team asking for process improvement requests. We did the whole sticky notes all over the wall. And in those trainings, the rules were you did not throw money at it and you did not throw staff at it. So in order to meet those requirements of our innovation training, the total disband is where we landed.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilman Hoagland?
I guess, Carrie, where I'm having the conflict in my mind is the innovation training, and then we have the Meridian way, you know, where we provide outstanding public service. And that's kind of the dilemma where I'm like, okay, are we providing a service that's outstanding and maybe above and beyond to some degree? And that's why I look at, okay, if we are, let's not have the rest of the ratepayers pay for it, but have that being funded. So that's kind of just the situation where I have this little mental struggle.
Right. And I get that. I totally understand where you're coming from. I think as far as those of us that are dealing with it every day, we're feeling like it's not this great, excellent service. We are truly struggling to keep up with it. Just because of the intricacies in between every single property and the situations that arise with that property each and every day.
So Carrie, to that point, if you had more resources to deal with it, and we were charging inadequately for the resources, but that's, you know, personally, I don't want to see this go away. I think we should charge for what the cost is. And if it takes more people and we got to charge for that, eventually you're going to find out where the market will or won't bear the service, or it's always going to be passed on to the renter and the landlords won't care what the cost is, because to them it's a value. And if you want to rent, that's how they're going to do it. But it's clear that we have not been recouping our costs. And maybe we're not putting enough staff resources into it, if that's what it is, and the cost should be higher. You know, that's
there is definitely room for changes, implementations of different things. I mean, I'm not going to throw the baby out with the bathwater. So if the order is we will not disband, we will continue. I'm back to the drawing board to keep things going and make them better.
Mr. Mayor,
that's one pro.
it seems to me, based on at least what's been shared, that there are, and the information that you, or that Todd emailed to us, which thank you for that. That was very thorough. That there's pros and cons on either side. And it sounds like the pros of disbanding it are outweighing the cons from the staff's perspective. And I appreciate that you come and say, hey, we want to do our job really well and we don't feel like we are. Thank you for coming and talking to us about that, because we very much appreciate that staff has a desire to do that. I agree with the mayor that I'd like to see this continue for a number of reasons. And so are you able to maybe help us understand more what the cons are, what the trade-off is in terms of you're obviously experiencing some frustration with the process. So if this goes away, what is it that is improving? And how did you all balance that with then not having that service? So in other words, I'm under the impression, the assumption that this is just going to create other challenges. Like we're just trading off issues and we have to kind of decide which are the most manageable. Is that correct?
If it, yes, you are correct. If it goes away, we will have tons less paperwork that we're trying to chase and even validate, because just because the paper is turned in or the form is turned in does not mean the information on that piece of paper is correct. We have to validate documents from all the tenants, all the renters, or I mean, all the tenants, all the owners. We have to make sure there's property management agreement in place. This could mean anywhere from 1 to 3 final reads just to get ready for the renter to move in because somebody has messed up a date. You know, the tenant says they're moving in on one day, the owner says, no, they're moving in on this day. And now you've got these two arguing over the date after we've already sent the water guys out to do now 3 final reads or 3 reads in prep. Then once they do move out, then you've got more final reads, more final bills. Well, I didn't move out on this day. I don't want to pay that $2.15. And that was a conversation we had last week. The final bill, the renter thought that was $2.15 higher than what it should have been based on the fact that the owner told us that he moved out on this day when he actually says he moved out the next day. So it's things like that that is becoming more and more and more and more burdensome. If they go away, the owner or the property manager gets the bill. It's up to them to keep track of who moved in when and disperse that bill however you see fit.
Thank you. That's helpful.
So, Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Hoagland.
I just want to kind of follow up on your line of thinking and I certainly don't want to have staff that's frustrated and not, that's not a good working deal. And so that's why I just want to explore further, you know, if you go to a $50 annually per account that they have to pay, you know, if it stayed at 5,500 customers, there's $275,000. You can hire additional people to service. Well, we hope we can hire additional people. It's kind of hard to hire people these days. And knowing full well the market would adjust, there'll be people going, no, we're not paying $50. So even if you drop that down to 5,000, that's 200,000. You half it. Let's say you go to 2,500, which is less than half. You're $125,000. But I guess where I'm going with this, throwing these numbers out, is more staff the solution, or is it truly that point where it doesn't matter if you have more staff, the issues and frustrations will still remain? It's just a new person that has to deal with them.
I would agree with that. I would agree with that statement is that you're adding more staff to the mix. It's just that many more people that are upset.
Councilman Burt.
Just for clarification, is it a yearly fee or is it just a turnover of rental fee?
We were anticipating that it would just be a turnover fee, basically an application fee. And the way we've kind of laid it out as far as if we go that route, we would actually charge that up front at the time of the billing directive, which would mean it would be the owner's responsibility, not keep shifting the burden to the tenant.
At the end of the day, the fee's got to be the cost of the service, however that is. So it's going to be equal to whatever we decide the needs are to provide that service.
And that is something that Todd did commit to, is that if we went with the additional application fee, we would reevaluate that every year. Adjust.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Borton.
I appreciate this dialogue. From the data that we were presented before, part of what makes me like your recommendation is the process that goes into it, the process guy. And your department thoroughly vetted pros and cons that we're all wrestling with right now. So I'm leaning towards going forward with what's being recommended from the department. We're going to have data to track. It blows up. We can, nothing that says you couldn't pivot back, adjust policy again. So in light of how you got to this conclusion, for me, it seems worth giving it a shot. Certainly there's 2 sides to it. Makes sense to get it.
With that statement, Mr. Councilman, the recommendation on the table being disband or increase the fee. Our request was to disband, but the discussion has led towards increase the fee.
Mr. Mayor, my thought would be the recommendation to
Okay.
disband.
Okay.
Going forward, right, current accounts remain as if, but the new ones going forward. Can we track that? And we see how it works, and see if we just don't know. It is a pivot from how we've done it, but we're a much bigger, different city. We might find out in 3 or 6 months that it wasn't the right decision, and the impact on the individual renters and some shut-off concerns are greater than savings and time and reallocation. Maybe that's the case, and let's recognize and pivot back. But I wouldn't want to be afraid to try your recommendation based on what out there. Just seems sound. That would be my preference.
Mayor,
Councilman Burr.
I agree on the lines of Councilman Gordon, but I also look at what we've done in the past with this innovation team. Echo? Hello? We good? Ready to roll, Dean? Okay. So it's Joe's fault. So I look at what we've done in the past with the innovation team and and what we've been able to accomplish and resources that we've been able to save and efficiencies that we've been able to better. Especially, I think there was one situation in planning department where we did an innovation project and it really helped out with the processes that they were dealing with. And so I think that we have these processes in place for a reason. And as a council member, and I know we're all different, I'm one of 6, we all have our own opinions, but I rely heavily on staff and what they feel is correct and what they recommend. And most of the time I agree, sometimes not, but in this case I do. So I would support your recommendation.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Pro. And for the record, we can save a lot of time, resources, and processes by eliminating a lot of things.
What are we waiting for?
Well, you may not like a lot of those things if we want to just do for that point, but yeah. Councilman Pro.
So I echo the concerns that Councilman Hoagland has presented. I have a lot of, I realize that we're probably not doing shutoffs frequently. I mean, we usually get notified when there's a shutoff, so I know it's not really frequent, but would it be possible to implement a notice to the address that's receiving the warnings? So if 3 warnings go to the owner or wherever that address, mailing address is it possible to also make sure a notice goes to the property address? That would make me significantly more comfortable that it goes out with the first notice that's sent to the property, because I mean, in some situations, notices have to be posted to the property itself if utilities are going to be shut off. So I think it would be good to make sure that there's some sort of mailing to the resident, to the property itself. And the other thing I want to mention is that we've approved quite a bit of multifamily. And so I anticipate that if we keep the program, it's only going to get bigger and more challenging. So
The multifamilies are a non-issue because the multifamily, that 32 unit building, that bill goes to one person of the property manager of that building. So those 32 units are not getting notified of anything.
is it one bill for all the units, or are they sent separately and managed separately by the property management companies?
One bill per building per water meter.
Are all new multifamilies required to be set up that way, or can they meter them separately so the tenants pay them?
They can do sub meters, but I believe City of Meridian typically has one large meter for the entire building. And then it would be up to the property manager to put sub meters on them to where they would get their bill for the 100,000 gallons. And then they would be able to look at their own meters and determine that no, the City of Meridian wouldn't go down that far.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, this would require a change to an ordinance because it is third-party building directors are an ordinance.
Mr. Mayor, that's your microphone. We've informed IT that it's getting some feedback from the court.
So you would likely have a public hearing if we've done it, as we've done in the past. We haven't really vetted it with the other agency or the other users of the system, the property managers, of whether how that they're feeling about it. So you can take the step if this is the directive, we'll draft a repeal. And then we can notice it up for a public hearing and then at least get some feedback. But we can't just stop doing it. We can't just turn it off.
Mr. Cavanagh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've struggled with this one. I appreciate Carrie, you and Todd making time to kind of walk me through some of this. I think my conflict for me has been, I want to be really sympathetic to our staff that are bringing, I think is a real valid concern versus maintaining a program that seems to get a lot of use. When I met with finance, I kind of said that my philosophy is the user is ultimately the one that should be worried about paying it, not just the person who owns the building, but the person who's using the product. So I'm still struggling that because we're only presented really right now with two options, either keep it as is or do away with it. To be supportive of either one, I think that we've kind of touched on this a little bit, that maybe there's some opportunity for some modification, appropriate, fees and cost recovery that would cover additional staff to help with that. Appreciate the challenge that you took upon yourself to say, we want to solve this problem without spending more money and hiring more people. And when you look at that with an issue like this, there is only kind of one solution that presents itself. To the question about an ordinance, I've talked to some property managers, much like Carrie said, they all are for the most part going to be opposed to this. I don't think we're going to have any property managers that are going to say they think this is a good idea. But I'm certainly open to a public hearing if we want to bring a revised change. I don't think I'm going to be supportive of it, but from a process standpoint, to allow for a public hearing for council to gain additional feedback before we render a decision, I wouldn't be opposed to that.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Hoagland.
Yeah, one thing I've learned over the years, not just working for city, but in other jobs, is you listen to people down in the trenches because they're the ones doing the battle, doing the work. And when you learn more about what they do and the situations they faced, it's something that you have to pay attention to and need to listen to. And I appreciate you, Carrie, the dialogue and letting me kind of think out loud on some of these things and looking at options. I think following, council saying we need to come back with an ordinance, I can be supportive of coming back with an ordinance, seeing what people have to say, looking at the numbers. I think Councilman Borton brings up a good point about, we could always, if we do go that route, the route that you're recommending to disband third-party building, we can always pivot later on if it doesn't work. And one of the metrics I would look at is that write-off percentage rate. Is one of the things I'm concerned about, because that is, people aren't paying their bills and somebody's going to have to pay for it, and it'd be the other ratepayers. So I think if we go to that ordinance, have that drafted up, I'm good with that, and have a hearing and then go forward from there. So that's my 2 cents.
We will bring it back in that form for a public hearing.
Thank you so much.
Council, we reached the end of our meeting. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Burt.
I move that we adjourn this meeting.
Mr. Mayor,
Motion to
my apologies.
Oh, wait, come on.
Item 14.
Yes, we need to approve, sorry. Yeah.
All right,
Thank you, Chris, for that reminder.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Borton.
as to item 14, I move that we approve the community match agreement between the city of Meridian and JST Manufacturing as presented regarding the ADO tax reimbursement incentive in the amount of $27,000.
Second motion.
I have a motion and a second to approve the agreement. Is there any discussion? If not, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The agreement item is agreed to. Now, do I have a motion?
Thank you, Chris, for that reminder. I forgot. Mr. Mayor, I move that we, this time for sure, 100% adjourn the meeting.
I have a motion to adjourn the meeting. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. We are adjourned. Council, call the meeting to order. For the record, it is October 5th, 2021 at 6:00 PM. We'll begin this evening's regular city council meeting with roll call attendance.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilman Borton.
Here.
Councilman Cavanagh.
Here.
Councilwoman Perot. Councilman Hoagland.
Here.
Councilman Burnt.
Here.
Mayor Simison.
Here. Next item would be the Pledge of Allegiance. Would our scout troop like to come forward and lead us in the pledge? Would that be all right?
Thanks, guys.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Burnt,
point of privilege, please.
take it.
You know, I absolutely love it when I see these scouts come to our city council meeting. So I appreciate what you guys do for our community. I appreciate the level of service that you provide and that you strive for. And I appreciate all the things that you're learning. So keep up the good work. Appreciate you.
Thank you, Councilman Burnt. We had no one sign up for the community invocation, so we'll move on to the adoption of the agenda.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Burnt,
no changes to the agenda, so I move that we adopt the agenda as published.
Second the motion.
I have a motion and a second to adopt the agenda as published. Is there any discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The agenda is adopted. Clerk, we haven't been signed up under public forum.
Mr. Mayor, no one has signed up.
Okay. All right, then we will move on to action items for this evening. Our first item up is a public hearing for proposed 2021-2022 Meridian Parks and Recreation Adult Sports League fees. I will turn this over to Mr. White.
Mr. Mayor and Council, good evening. I'm here in front of you to talk about a couple fees that we have to increase based on our current cost recovery philosophy and to cover our hard costs for our leagues. This is for basketball that's coming up, as well as some of our volleyball leagues. Really, the hard costs that are increasing are for officials. You guys have probably heard about all the officials and the shortage, stuff like that. Well, with our agreement with the USSSA Officials Association is with basketball and volleyball, the fees have gone up for officials. So this is really just to adjust our fees to help cover those costs. So here in the next couple of weeks, we'll be coming forward with our whole slew of fees with our activity guide. We just had to pull these out early because we need to start advertising for those basketball leagues and some of the volleyball leagues now, rather than the next couple of weeks. So with that, I'll stand for questions. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. White. And just for the record, the public hearing was opened. I don't believe if I really said that or not, but that was the open public hearing. Councilman Burnt.
Eric, thank you. So fees for pickleball going down?
Great question.
Just kidding. They should.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Cavanagh.
Garrett, appreciate you bringing these, appreciate expediting as we get promoting this. A suggestion might be for these, and maybe when you bring the rec guide, finance does a good job of saying, here's the fee and this is the change, the percentage or the dollar amount. Just maybe a request as you're bringing those to us. I think it's good for us to track and to be able to understand too. I think you did a great explanation as to why fees are going up. I think it helps us understand what's necessitating an increase or a decrease.
So just give us a percent, give you like the percentage increase, decrease type of thing.
Percentage or a dollar amount or whatever
Sure.
finance is doing. I think it's been helpful for us to see when fees are going up or going down.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Pro.
Garrett, do you ever have, does the Parks and Rec ever have anybody call and say, hey, I'd really like to be involved in this league, but I don't have the financial means to do it? And if so, how are those questions answered?
Mr. Mayor, Councilman Pro, you know, I haven't received those phone calls. We get some of those calls with our youth programs and things like that. And we have the Care Enough to Share program that we help cover 80% of the youth if it's 18 or 17 or younger. For adults, we really haven't had that come to fruition, I would say, but something we probably could think about.
Thank you. Council, any additional questions? for staff?
Good luck on your hunt.
Okay. This is a public hearing. Mr. Clerk, do we have anyone signed up to provide testimony on this item?
Mr. Mayor, we did not.
Okay, is there anybody that would like to come forward and provide testimony on this item, either in the room or online? If you're online, you can use the raise your hand feature at the bottom, and we can bring you in for to provide testimony. Being nobody in the room and nobody online wishing to provide testimony, do I have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
I have a motion to close the public hearing. Is there a second? Motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of closing the public hearing, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the public hearing is closed. Next item is number 2.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilwoman Pearl.
I move that we approve resolution number 21-2287, adopting the 21-22 adult sports league fees of the Meridian Parks and Recreation Department and authorizing the Meridian Parks and Rec Department to collect such fees and providing an effective date.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion, a second. Is there any discussion? If not, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the resolution is agreed to. Thank you, Garrett. Next item up is item 3, public hearing for Oaks North and Oakmore DA modification, H 2021-0058. We will open this public hearing with staff comments, and I'll turn this over to Joe.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, good evening. As you can see before you, it's good old Oaks North, over 226 acres of land as of now. Originally, the project was much larger than that, included Oaks South, as well as a little bit along the southwest corner at McDermott and McMillan. However, the project before you tonight is really just for this area here. So the history here is pretty old in the sense of 2013 and being almost 10 years ago. There's the original annexation then, rezoned preliminary plat. However, before you tonight, they're trying to amend the existing DA from 2013 for the approved Oaks North subdivision to remove this 7-acre area, which is known as the Oakmore subdivision, which was approved in 2018. And the point is to remove it from the original DA to create a new DA consistent with that plat. The 7.4 acres of the Oakmore subdivision was approved in August 2019 under a 2018 permit, I should say application, and it modified this area of the site. Originally, this was slated for multifamily, so it removed a component of the multifamily area and proposed more single-family residential and rezoned it from R15 to R4. At the time of the Oakmore plat, the rezone, the applicant also received approval of a DA modification for Oaks North and the Oaks South project area that updated the overall concept plan consistent with this new plat and this new project. However, that DA was never executed, so it is no longer valid or applicable. In short, the applicant is submitting this DA modification for this plat to keep the Oakmore preliminary plat alive and to move forward with a new DA for this subject area. It is consistent with existing provisions within the Oaks North DA that allow subsequent phases of the project to remain valid so long as there is a valid final plat in existence. There was one neighbor who submitted some public testimony, and that was just a general opposition to any modification that increased the density and changed the zoning back to R15, which is not necessarily applicable, but overall, point taken. Staff does recommend approval of this new DA in order to pull this section of it out and make it consistent with the approved preliminary plat from 2018. Staff has tied the new DA to the existing or to the approved plat, landscape plan, and elevations, and has tied it to those conditions of approval within that plat from 2018 as well. I will stand for any questions.
Thank you, Joe. Council, any questions for staff?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilwoman Pearl.
so can you help us understand the history on why the modified DA wasn't executed?
Councilwoman Pro, I don't know exactly from the applicant's perspective why it was not executed, but I do know it never was. It was under a different ownership at that time too. Now it is not. It is under common ownership with the rest of Oaks North. I think I'll leave that to the applicant to discuss why it wasn't signed. But regardless of that, the plat is still alive. And that's why we told them, hey, if you want to keep the plat alive, you need to do this DA mod so that we can keep this in its own DA like it was supposed to be in 2018.
Mr. Mayor, a follow-up.
Councilman Pro.
So the residences in this project are constructed, correct?
This, no, that's right. In this phase, no. So again, pretend this is single family, but generally speaking, the line of existing approvals goes about here. And then all this is done. Oak South is completely developed. About half of Oaks North, I would say, is probably actually constructed, if not a little bit less. They have the community park and they have a lot of this along the south end, which I've done recent inspections out there and it looks great. But nothing in this northeast area has been constructed. You're welcome.
Council, any other questions? Okay, ask the applicant, please come forward. And if you can say your name and address, be recognized for 15 minutes.
You, Mayor Simison, Council, Jeff Bauer, 601 West Bannock in Boise with Gibbons Pursley. Here tonight on behalf of the applicant Toll Brothers. We would like to thank Mr. Dodson and Mr. Neri. We've worked together to craft the development agreement in front of you tonight. Had a few conference calls last week to kind of hash out exactly what area this development agreement covers, as well as the conditions of approval. To answer Councilmember Pearl's question, it is unfortunate that development agreement wasn't signed. And, you know, we don't have any excuses except to say Toll did buy this project from Coleman Homes. And it was about the 2018, 2019 period that transition was happening. And I think this is just one ball that got dropped. But to reiterate planning staff's comments, the development agreement before you tonight will not change any zoning or any approvals. It's really just to paper the 2018 amendment to the preliminary plat. And so we're here to answer any questions if you have any more, but otherwise we agree with staff's recommended conditions and look for your approval.
Thank you. Council, any questions? All right, thank you very much. Clerk, do we have anyone signed to provide testimony on this item?
Mr. Mayor, we did not.
Okay, is there anybody in the audience that'd like to provide testimony on this item or online using the raise your hand feature on Zoom? Seeing no one wishing to provide testimony, would the applicant like any final comments? Then do I have a motion to close the public hearing?
Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Hoagland.
Mr. Mayor, I move to close the public hearing for Oaks North and Oakmore DA modification H 2021-0058.
Second that motion.
I have a motion and a second to close the public hearing. Is there any discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the public hearing is closed.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Hoagland.
appreciate the work of staff and legal on sorting this all out and making sure it all works and moves forward, and appreciate that good work. So after considering all staff, applicant, and public testimony, I move to approve file number H 2021-0058 as presented in the staff report for the hearing date of October 5th, 2021.
Second that motion.
I have a motion and a second to approve item H 2021-0058. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilwoman Pro.
I'd like to just say that I really appreciate staff's ability to simplify the application. So reading the two staff reports and the narrative and everything, I was like, wow, they were really able to kind of par that down into something that was much more simple. So you did a great job with that. Thank you.
Thank you. I think it just shows my intelligence. That's about it. That's all it's really saying here.
And your humility, Joe.
Yeah.
Never underestimate your humility.
Self-deprecation, humility, it's close. Thank you.
All right, if there's no other comments, clerk call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Borton, Cavanagh.
Aye.
Burrow,
Aye.
Hoagland.
Aye.
Burnt.
Aye.
All ayes, motion carries, and the item is agreed to. Thank you very much. Last item on our agenda is ordinance number 21-1950. Ask the clerk to read this ordinance by title.
Thank you, Ms. Mayor. It's an ordinance amending Meridian City Code as codified at Title 11 pertaining to landscape and common open space and site amenity requirements in Chapter 3, multifamily common open space design requirements in Chapter 4, and various other amendments to Chapters 1 through 5 and 7, providing for a waiver of the reading rules and providing an effective date.
Thank you, council. You've heard this ordinance read by title. Is there anybody that would like it read in its entirety? Seeing none, do I have a motion?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Pearl.
I move that we approve ordinance number 211950 with the suspension of rules.
Second motion.
I have a motion and a second to approve ordinance number 21-1950 under suspension of the rules. Is there any discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the ordinance is agreed to. Council, anything under future meeting topics?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Burr.
move that we adjourn the meeting.
I have a motion to adjourn the meeting. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. We are adjourned.